Hello, my name is Brian Pruitt, and I was with you on season 1, and I'm excited to be here for season 2. I'm excited because this year is going to be an awakening. We got a great group of men here, and something on the inside is going to wake up inside of every man who is here this weekend. I want you guys to be with us. Join us.
Hey, I'm thrilled that it's time for another man camp, but this time we're in northern Michigan. Now, I've spent many, many years in northern Michigan. I absolutely love it here. The fishing is incredible. There are so many lakes and streams and rivers and ponds, and you do get a feel that you're away from it all. And so this is the ideal place to bring a group of fathers and sons, because that's what we're about this go around, and let them tear down the individual walls that are perhaps between dads and sons, and then build up the walls around their family. I am excited to see what God is going to do. It's always exciting when the guys pull up. You never know the look on their face, what it's going to tell you. Some guys pull up, man, they're just like the peace of God is all over them, and they've had this beautiful drive up to northern Michigan. Those are pretty cool, but I love the guys that show up and they just have that freaked out look because they've been lost in the woods for about 3 hours, right? So they're pulling in to come on to retreat, and it couldn't come fast enough for these guys. But however they show up, I'm just excited for what God is going to do in their lives. And this wildly diverse bunch of men and their sons that have come together. It's going to be pretty special.
My son and I, we've been having some issues over the past couple of years, and I'm excited to grow closer and stay closer the rest of our lives. And you know, I hear a lot of stories about fathers and sons not speaking when they get older, and I don't want that to be us.
Thought it would be a great opportunity to actually seek the face of God and to see what God is saying in my life, and but not only that, you know, to have something poured into me this weekend. So I actually came up here this week so empty that I'm really tired, so I'm ready to be filled up.
I'm just excited to grow more and see my son grow and just experience life, God, and the wisdom that all these guys carry.
I just believe that God is gonna do some amazing things.
We're looking forward to spending some time together outdoors to grow closer to God. We have a pretty good relationship, but I think there's things we can do to become closer together and really develop a good relationship between Glenn and his brothers. And we're just looking forward to what God has to tell us through Brian's teachings.
There's a lot of different things here that I'll have an opportunity to do with the horseback riding and some fishing. Those are some opportunities that I didn't have with my father, so I'm excited to have some of those opportunities with my son. So,
looking forward to some time away with Jesus and just some tips that'll help me grow as a father, so I can pass on my faith and my love for God onto my sons and my daughter.
It's important for guys to understand their role as dads, as fathers, as husbands, as men of God. If you don't understand the basic role, then just going through motions, it makes no sense. So I want to lay a foundation and just talk about walls and that great wall builder from Scripture, Nehemiah. I want to talk to you a little bit tonight about these two things right here. Okay, what's this for? Anybody know? Pounding nails. If you're pounding nails, what are you doing? In the bigger picture, what are you doing? Building. You're building. Good, you're building. So this is for building, okay? All right, so we got something for building. What would this be for? Fighting. Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't use a lot of swords in today's world, but I assure you there were men years ago that looked a lot like us, and that's what they used to fight. Okay, they didn't pull out a Glock 9, they pulled out one of these bad boys, okay? And it's automatic, it never runs out. Isn't that interesting? It never runs out. You don't have to reload that bad boy, but you do have to keep it sharp. So this is for what? That's for building. What's this for? Fighting. This is for fighting. Okay, building and fighting, building and fighting. So is there any biblical examples of somebody that whose life was epitomized by building and yet simultaneously fighting? Who would that be? Say it loud.
Nehemiah.
Nehemiah. So he's serving a king in a distant land. And he comes in one day and he's got this kind of this sad look on his face, right? Sad look on his face. Kind of like when we tell the young guys to do chores, right? Dads, you all know that look, right? Ugh, that sad look. And the king says, "What's up?" Now that's the Molitorism. He probably didn't say what's up, but he said, why dost thou have a longeth face? And Nehemiah said, let king live forever. I guess that's what if you're messing with the king, you got to start with something like that. Like, hey, live forever. Am I good? Can I keep going? Yeah, good. Yeah, what? Anyway, he says, look, the walls around my city, back in Judah, back in Jerusalem, the walls are broken down. Now, back then, the cities were walled. In other words, you'd have this great big wall that somebody else that wanted to come and do you harm couldn't just step over. So you would have massive wall and you would have gates that were very strong. And so at night, you get your people in there and you just shut up the gates and everybody inside is safe. Okay? You got the picture? His problem is the walls are broken down. The walls are broken down. So if the walls are broken down, what can the enemy do? What can the enemy do?
Invade in and slaughter and steal and...
Invade, slaughter, and steal. That's pretty good. Absolutely. Now, when I first was kind of exposed to Nehemiah's story, I got it's all about the walls and it's about the city. Okay, well, Jerusalem, Judah, yeah, we got to protect that city. We got to rebuild the walls. And the more I've studied it, the more I go, that's almost irrelevant. It's almost irrelevant. Because what caused Nehemiah to look so sad was not because some stupid wall is crumbling. What caused him to be so sad was because the families inside the wall were at risk. This was the issue. The next generations concerned Nehemiah deeply. And so he went to the king and he said, hey, yeah, you live forever, but here's what I'd kind of like to do. Can I go back and rebuild the walls? And the guy had favor with the king. And the king said, yeah, go. And Nehemiah said, can I have letters and I can take it to the forester, the guy that would give me timbers, and all these other people? He said, yeah, here you go. So Nehemiah goes back to his home area, his country, and he really scopes it out. He scopes it out. And what he finds out is that people are they're oblivious to this. This is how it has to be. It's how it always has been, so I guess it's just how it has to be. And those people had no vision of what it would take to protect their families and the next generation like we have here. So guess what happened when the man of God wanted to do great things for his family? Do you think everybody went, what a super idea, you're awesome, we're behind you? No. People came out of the woodwork to say, bad idea, you'll never do it, you can't make a change, you don't have what it takes. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever tried to do something good to rebuild walls around your home and you get those thoughts? Sometimes it's a real person that goes chirp, 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 right? Well, guess what? Nehemiah didn't buy it. He didn't listen. He said, no, thank you. Hush. I'm going to be about the Father's business. And so he rallied people around him. And others would come to attack them as they're rebuilding the wall. Now that's pretty scary Because if you're standing here and you're doing this, and all of a sudden the enemy comes and they've got swords, this doesn't look too imposing. So what did he do? He arranged the guys and he said, about half of you, I want you to hang on to one of these things. All right? One of these things. Mr. Pruitt, come on up here. So half the guys, he said, you hold that. All right? You hold that. Okay? Now, come here, Aaron. He said, the other half the guys, he said, you hold that. He said, now your job is to build. And so he would begin to rebuild the wall. So, right, you can build. All right? You can build. Now notice, he's watching what he's doing. He doesn't have to watch out there that some crazy man is going to come there to cut his head off. Why is that? Because he's right here. He's got his back. Okay? Are you with me? Now, if you stand there with a sword the whole day, nothing gets done. If all you do is build and you can't defend yourself, you get killed. So Nehemiah understood we had to do it together. We have to do it together. And so guess what? Look around you. Look what we've got here, guys. We've got a group of guys that have come together to strengthen the walls around our families. Pretty awesome, isn't it?
When you go to build something for God, you can bet there'll be a fight, you know, to take it. And whenever you go to work, you better bring your sword along, you know, because the enemy just doesn't let you come in and take over, you know.
I thought about the aspect of, you know, Aaron, you had the hammer, right? And I was holding the sword, and I was just thinking about it in every man's life, you know, there's the, you know, you're kind of holding the sword in one hand and hammering it here. So in one hand you're working, in the other hand you're defending, and the importance of the balance of that, you know, it's kind of the difference, the toss-up between your family life and your work life, you know, and how often the battle for most men is the time that they put into the work and the time that they put into their families, and when to know when to stop, you know, this, you know, and to keep that sword up. And I think it goes back to the importance of talking about other people, friends, because there's times when you get tired of hammering, you know, there's times you get tired of swinging the sword, you know, and those are the moments I need Desmond, you know, those are the moments I need Matt, you know, so that jumped out to me when we were up there.
Here's what he said to his people. I just love this. This is over in Nehemiah 4 and 4:14. He says, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. So he calls attention to the Creator, what? That one that created everything, universe, all of it. So he says, he's not saying just rely on your own strength. He says, remember the Lord who is great and awesome. Now listen to this. And fight for your brothers, your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your homes. And when the enemy heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to his own work. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So they tried to trick him, they tried to pull him away, and he says, no, I'm doing a great work, I can't come down. And then he gives charge to the men, and he says, fight. Do this work for your brothers first. Isn't it interesting? The first group he mentioned was his brothers. We're here as brothers. Everybody that's here, we're here as brothers. He said, fight for your brothers. Now, some of you guys might be going through stuff. I don't know. But if you are, guess what? There's brothers here that can help us. They're here to help us. Safe place, man. No judgment, no nothing. This is an absolute safe place, okay? I expect us to be open with one another, and if we need help in some area, get guys to pray with you, love on you, talk to you, whatever. But he said, fight for your brothers. Then he said, for your sons and your daughters. He said, in your wives. And finally he said, in your homes. And that's awesome. So guys, I give you this charge today. There is a fight going on right now. And you've got to decide and determine how strong are the walls around your home right now. How strong are the walls? And if you're a normal man, there are some cracks in the walls. I don't care what they are, don't matter to me. I have cracks in the walls around my home. And today when I lift up Ezekiel James Molitor to the Lord, I think, God, what would I give to see that young man grow up in a world where he doesn't have to go through the things that I went through, where he doesn't have to walk poorly, where he doesn't have to walk without God for 30 years before the Lord finally got my attention and we went in the right direction. What would I give? Another way to look at it, what would I not give? What would cause me to say, it's not such an important work, I'm coming down from the wall? What would cause me to leave that gap that my grandson would be vulnerable? What would it be? Would it be something ungodly on a computer screen? Would it be lie, cheat, and steal in the business world? Would it be compromise? What would it be? And guys, a lot of what we're here for this week is to make sure that there's not a gap there, that there's not something that would cause you to say, it's no longer a great work to protect my home. It's no longer worth it. It's no longer worth the fight. I'm tired of swinging the hammer. The sword is getting kind of heavy. I don't know. No. Let there be nothing, guys, that would cause us to walk away from our sacred duty as men. And I believe that this is the time that we're going to be strengthened together. Those cracks in the wall, by the time we walk out of here, they'll be all patched up. And nobody's coming through. You know, something special about camp is always food, all right? And this place has tremendous chow. We met Tammy, the cook, and she has threatened us that if we put her on film, she's going to stop cooking. So you may never see her, but man, she's fixing up great meals every time. And it's good just to see the guys gather around chow and just start that initial fellowship just to get to know each other. It's always a great joy for me to get to work with other guys, other speakers at these retreats and conferences that we do. And one of my absolute favorites is my beloved son, Brian Pruitt. And I've been his spiritual dad for more than 20 years now, and I'm so proud of him. He is a phenomenal communicator, and he will pull from Scripture the most practical, beautiful stuff. And not only does he teach well, but he inspires. Man, young guys, old guys get around Brian Pruitt and their lives are transformed.
As men, we have a tendency to allow life to rock us to sleep a little bit. And what happens is this: you get married and you're responsible for somebody, so you stop taking risk because you can't be hurt and take care of your lovely wife, right? And then you start having kids. And with each kid, the first kid, the second kid, the third kid, some of you several kids, right? You stop taking risk with every kid. And it's not that you're not being a man, it's not that you're not being a provider, it's just that you stop taking risks because you're the provider. You're the one who's responsible for all these people in the house, and you've got to be healthy, you've got to be well, and you stop taking risk. I did that, and guess what? I was dying a slow death. Let me just be honest with you. I didn't notice it. I didn't know why it was happening. I knew I was a little more cranky, knew that there was something I was looking for, but I wasn't sure what it was I was looking for, knew the call of God on my life, knew the purpose of God for my life, but I knew there was something else missing. And then I came to camp last year and something got woke up. It was in a group of men like this, and I hadn't been in a group of men like this since my days of playing football at Central Michigan University. And on that team, there was camaraderie, there was challenges, there were guys taking risks and guys challenging you to take risks, and all of a sudden you're running around the place and you're doing chest bumps. Come on, give my chest bump, buddy. Come on, give my chest bump right there. That's what I'm talking about, yeah. I have not taken a hit like that since Central Michigan either. Something happens in situations like this, guys. The Bible talks about iron sharpening iron. That's what's gonna happen here this week. Iron's going to sharpen iron. And what's going to happen for some of us, this sword here is out right now. It's laying out in the open. But some of us, we've probably showed up and we've got the sheath, we've got the cover on. And we're going to have to take ourselves out in order for the iron to show and for the iron to be sharpened. It's the bottom line. Let me read something to you. Powerful passage of scripture. I love it. I have it on my wall in my basement. And someday I wouldn't mind if it sat on my tombstone. Because here is the legacy of a man by the name of King David. It's a tough situation, but an incredible legacy. In this situation found in 2 Samuel chapter 17, verse 10, here's what happens. David's having problems with his son. Sometimes we have problems with our children, right? His son has turned on him. David is wounded deeply. David, this incredible warrior, this incredible soldier who has taken out giants, who has taken out armies, but David would not raise a fist against his own son while others told him he should take his life. Here's what's said about David. Absalom talks to his counselors about how he should attack his father. Like I said, bad situation, bad circumstances, but hear the legacy that David was about to leave. As Absalom is talking to his counselors about how should I kill, how should I attack my father, how should I take the throne, and he asks his counselors, here's what they say. They say this. In verse 8, it says, you know your father and his men, they are fighters, and as fierce as wild bear robbed of her cubs. Besides, your father is an experienced fighter. He will not spend the night with the troops. I want you to jump over to verse 10. Powerful piece of scripture. It says this. Then even the bravest soldiers whose heart is like the heart of a lion will melt with fear, for all of Israel knows that your father is a fighter, and those that are with him are brave. Go ahead, clap. Go ahead. Just clap. You got to know when to clap. I'm going to help you, okay? For all of Israel knows that your father is a fighter, and that those men who are with him are brave. Horrible circumstance, but here you hear the legacy of David.
I don't think David built the legacy by thinking, I'm going to build a legacy of having really brave men around me and being a fierce fighter. No, his passion was for the Lord. You saw that when Goliath challenged the nation of Israel. He said, who does this guy think he is? Even though he's a giant, he's puny in God's sight. And it's having that heart of God, that heart for God and that passion to defend the honor of the Lord. That gave him his legacy.
What made David a fighter? Let me share it quickly with you. You see, David swung a sword, and sometimes when he swung that sword, he would become weary. And in that moment, he understood there were a few things that it took to be a fighter. And one of them was simply this. You got to know what you're fighting for. My buddy, good friend of mine, recently told me the story of how he went through a divorce and lost all that he owned. And his son walked into the house and found him laying on the floor in the fetal position, and he was in tears. His son walks up to him, his teenage son walks up to him and simply says this to him. He says, Daddy, get up. The floor is not a place for a champion.
When Pruitt was talking about you can never be a champion laying on the floor. You can't be a fighter on the floor. You can't even be a man on the floor. And if we're not going to stand up and fight, whether for my kid or if I don't fight for your kid or his kid, then we might as well lay down on the floor.
Men, this week, I've come to simply say to you the same words of that wise young man. Some of you may have had some tough times in life. Some of you have maybe been knocked down in this life. Some of you may be going through the toughest time of your life right now, and we don't know it. You showed up, you pulled up with a smile on your face. May I say the wise words of that teenage boy? The floor is not a place for champions. It's time for you to get up. It's time for you to get up. And that takes courage. Sometimes the easiest thing to do is quit. Sometimes the easiest thing to do is to remain laying on the ground. Sometimes the easiest thing to do is to allow the referee of life to begin to do a 10 count over you. It's possible you showed up here this week and he's just been counting. 1, Brian, you don't understand how tired I am. I just can't do this anymore. 2, if I could just tell you what happened when I was 7 years old, and then you would understand why I'm struggling to be the father that I need to be to my 10-year-old. 2, 3, 4, the ref keeps counting. Brian, if you just understood, my dad was an alcoholic, and so it only makes sense. 6, 7, I'm just tired. 8, 9, and your children and our grandchildren, they're screaming at the top of their lungs and they're saying, Daddy, get up. The floor, the mat is not a place for champions. I need you to rise again. I am who I am today because I was a young man like your son. I didn't necessarily have a father, but I watched men who were father figures. Brian Molitor is one of those men. Been with him since I was 18 years old. I'm 41 years old today. I watched. I promise you, they're watching. I promise you, they are watching. And they're watching to see if they can say, my father is a fighter. And the men who are with him, oh yeah, they can bring it too, baby. They're brave. Let's give God a hand clap, guys. Come on.
The perfect way for a group of guys, especially fathers and sons, to end the night when you're up in northern Michigan is a campfire. There's just something very special about the fellowship that you enjoy around those flames, and we thought it'd be a great way to kick off the retreat around the fire.
It's been 10 months since I've walked those wooded acres that I've always known as home. The coast has kept me to herself, but it is time to break her spell. Feels like rivers have flooded from my eyes as I've changed into a better man. I look up to the stars and know it's time to head back east.